Good evening. My name is Jane Lamason, and I'm a master gardener, Napa County. And we'd like to welcome you to our library talk, and thank you for joining us. We have our library talks the first Thursday of every month. And tonight our talk is on growing lettuce all year round. Donna Wood will be walking us through this. Donna is part of our field test team. And we bring you these, as I said, we bring you these talks the first Thursday of every month in partnership with Napa County Library. And this evening will be the field test team. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to our partner, Katie. She will be talking a little bit about what you can find at the Napa County Library. Katie.
Thank you, Jane. Hi, my name is Katie. I'm on the reference team with the library. Now today I have 2 reading recommendations to go along with tonight's talk. If you have youngsters who live or visit your home and you'd like to encourage them to learn about gardening, Cool Leaf Lettuce by Katherine Hengel is an excellent book to share with them. It's a wonderful primer on how to plant, grow, and harvest your lettuce. The text is clear and the photos and illustrations are engaging for a young reader. It provides a basic understanding of the growing process and even includes a few recipes where they can enjoy the fruits of their labor. Reading it together with your young one is a great way to spend some time together, especially paired with a visit to your local nursery to pick out some lettuce seeds. Now, the second book is called Get Started Growing Vegetables by Simon Ackroyd, which is a perfect companion piece for your young reader. This title includes a section called Essential Equipment, where each essential tool is photographed, identified, and its purpose defined. It's a great way to introduce these tools to your young gardener. It introduces soil preparation and gives a brief overview of the life cycle of plants, photosynthesis, and the needs of the plant. It supplies instructions on how to plant and care for your vegetables, including lettuce. Now, a fun feature is at the beginning of each growing lesson where it shows you which essential tools you need. Then you can gather your materials, get your hands in the soil. This book is an enjoyable read that appeals to a wide-ranging audience, particularly for those practiced gardeners who want to share their love of gardening with their young ones. Now, of course, both these titles are available to borrow at the library, so I'll enter the titles and links to where you can find them in our catalog in the chat. And with that, I'll pass it back to you, Jane.
Well, thank you, Katie. Those are good recommendations. We have just a few more housekeeping items to cover before we get going. Just a reminder of who we are. We're the UC Master Gardeners of Napa County. There's a little bit about our mission. We are trained and certified by the UC, and then we are volunteers. We're basically non-paid public educators, and our goal is to train on home horticulture topics. You see there some of the ones that we like to make sure we're touching on, and that's sustainable landscape practices, and things like water conservation and so forth. A little bit also, next slide, please. You're going to receive a survey after attending this evening. And the survey is sent out by the UC. And it's in the goal of that survey is for us to better understand, are we hitting the mark? And are we making any difference in your gardening and your habits within the garden? Have you changed the way you're gardening? So if you don't want to receive that survey, we hope you will, because we do learn something from it. We hope you'll respond. But if you don't want to receive that survey, please put your name in the chat right now, and we will remove your name from that survey. Speaking of chat, as questions and comments come up this evening, please put them in the chat and we will cover those at the end of the evening. And maybe you'll stay around and talk to us a little bit about some of your experiences growing lettuce, or the type you like to grow. And this is also an opportunity for you to let us know, are you appreciating things such as hearing from our field test team? field test team is one of the many projects within the Master Gardeners, and Donna will tell you a little bit more about our field test team this evening. So thanks for joining. I'm going to turn it over to Donna Woodward, Master Gardener. Just a quick reminder, folks, to please turn off your video and mute yourselves. Thank you.
Good evening. You may be wondering, can you grow lettuce year-round in Napa Valley? Well, yes, you can. You might not be able to harvest it at any time during the year. Some times of the year are better for it, but with some effort, you can have lettuce in your garden all year and buy it infrequently. Our Master Gardeners Field Test Group started with a seasonal trial of growing romaine lettuce in our gardens, and that led to a longer-term experiment with growing lettuce throughout the year. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about lettuce, about our field test group, our climate and conditions for growing vegetables in our area, and then get on to what we learned in our trials. Next slide. I can think of no other vegetable that we consume as frequently as lettuce, but that cannot be preserved. Actually, I can think of no other vegetable we eat more frequently. Most of us eat lettuce several times a week. It's a standard part of the American diet to have a salad with dinner, and this usually includes lettuce. It is also used frequently in sandwiches, which is another staple of the American diet. Most vegetables can be frozen, canned, dried, fermented, or something. None of these methods applies to lettuce. And there are other vegetables that cannot be preserved, such as celery, but I can live without celery for quite a while. Lettuce is indispensable. When we grow lettuce in our gardens, we likely harvest it for a few weeks, but then it's on our grocery lists the rest of the year, and it's getting more expensive. It's currently about $3 a head, and that's not the organic stuff. So it is worthwhile to grow it as often as possible. Next. A little background about our climate. California is one of the few areas on Earth with a Mediterranean climate. The red areas on this map show where these are. Mediterranean means Middle Earth, and it fits the location of all these areas. They generally lie within 30 to 45 degrees of the equator. You see the equator in the middle of this map. If you go up 30 degrees, you'll encounter the beginning of the Mediterranean areas. And if you go south of the equator 30 degrees, you'll see the same thing. All of these areas have mild climates. Winters are not too cold and summers are not too hot. But that's only part of the story. Many areas on Earth have similar temperatures. When you look at this map, you will notice that all of these areas have oceans to the west of them. There are some other factors that come into play as well, such as altitude and surrounding areas. When all of the right factors come together, they produce a unique climate. The characteristics of this Mediterranean climate, and that's a small m, because it doesn't necessarily refer only to the Mediterranean Sea area, but Middle Earth climate, mild temperatures, warm, dry summers, and wet winters. This climate is ideal for growing a wide variety of plants. Warm weather plants thrive in the summer and cool weather types in the winter. Many plants can flourish year-round. This range of 30 to 45 degrees covers a pretty long area here in North America. Salem, Oregon sits right on the 45th parallel. I know because I grew up there, and I can tell you that winter gardens weren't really a thing. Winters are pretty long and very wet. My dad planted a large vegetable garden every year. It was planted in the spring, and by fall it was done. Garden and gardener took a break. This schedule was so imprinted on my brain that it took me many years of living in California and becoming a master gardener to realize I could plant a garden here in the winter. I think most of us adhere to this traditional schedule to some extent. Here in Napa Valley, we are in the heart of the Mediterranean climate zone. Lettuce, a cool weather plant, will flourish here in the cool months. The question is, can we push the envelope a little to grow lettuce all year? Next. A little background on the Master Gardeners Field Test Committee. This is a program that has been going on for years here in our Napa Valley Master Gardeners organization. We are a group of volunteers who make trial plantings of various vegetables in our home gardens. We usually pick 3 varieties of a particular vegetable, purchase the seeds, distribute them so that we are all planting the same seeds at the same time. We usually start in small containers, and once the plants are growing well, we transplant them into our gardens. We keep track of how the plants are doing as they grow, weigh and measure the produce once it is mature. Finally, we harvest and taste and compare to see which we like best. At the end of the trial, we tabulate our data and see if we have a consensus about which variety did best. This is not a truly scientific experiment. One thing we have learned is that within Napa Valley, there are many microclimates. That is, areas with different soil types, different elevations, different sun exposures. People have different watering systems. Some of us grow in raised beds, others in the ground. In other words, there are too many variables and too few of us to come to any conclusive results. Nevertheless, we usually come up with some sort of a agreement about which one grew best and which one we like best. Whatever happens, we can count on learning a lot about growing these vegetables. We pass on what we learn through the newspaper column or other presentations. We do these travels about 3 times per year. Early spring for an early summer harvest, late spring for a summer to fall harvest, and late summer or early fall for a fall to winter harvest. Since lettuce is a cool weather vegetable, it is usually planted in early spring or fall. Next. For our fall 2020 trial, we decided to grow 3 types of romaine lettuce. Fall planting is very time sensitive in our area. In the spring and early summer, you have lots of leeway for getting plants into the ground, but in the fall, it's a narrow window. We're planting cool weather vegetables, but we need to get them started while the weather is still quite warm, sometimes even hot. Seeds need to be started somewhere in late August or mid-September. They have to be monitored carefully. Lettuce seeds need sunlight to sprout. They should be barely covered with soil. Most seed packets recommend 1/8 inch of soil on top. Then they have to be kept moist, and once they have germinated, they can't be exposed to hot sun for very long. You can see the difficulty in keeping seeds and seedlings moist in hot conditions. If you neglect them even for a short time, that seed that has just started to open up, or that tiny seedling that has just poked its head up, can get really hot and die. With fall seeded vegetables, the plants need to reach a good enough size so we can plant them in the garden with enough time to get well established and vigorous before we reach what is called the Persephone period. Next. The Persephone period lasts from approximately November 20th to January 20th. This is the period of the shortest days of the year. The shortest day of the year is the winter solstice, December 21st. November 20th is 1 month before that, and January 20th is 1 month after that. What does this mean for our garden? If a plant has not matured by the time it enters this period, it might just sit there and do nothing until the days begin to lengthen again. Cool weather plants will survive cold weather and even frost, but they don't thrive. It's not a tragedy if a plant fails to mature before winter. It will sit there until the days begin to lengthen again, and then they will usually take off and produce a crop in the spring. But if you want a fall or winter crop, you have to get the timing just right. Just for out of curiosity, I wondered, who is this Persephone? You see her lovely statue here. She was the ancient Greek goddess of agriculture and vegetation. According to myth, she was abducted by Hades, the god of the underworld, and then also became queen of the underworld. She had 2 jobs. From then on, she was allowed to return to the upper world for part of the year, but had to return to the underworld for the rest of the year. You can see how this myth probably arose to explain the changing seasons and the effect on agriculture, and why the dark part of the year is named for her. Next. We chose romaine lettuce for our trial because it's popular and we all liked it. When it comes to picking a vegetable for our trials, we generally brainstorm until we hit on something that everybody's interested in. We also think about what most people in the general public will be likely to want to grow. This is a typical romaine head, similar to those you see in the grocery store. I expected to find 3 varieties that were similar to this in appearance. I was surprised to find out how much different they could be in size, texture, even color. Romaine is sometimes also called Kos, C-O-S. It was originally cultivated on the Greek island of Kos centuries ago. It was later adopted by the Romans, and this may be the origin of the name romaine. Next. Here are the 3 types that we found for our trial. As you can see, they look way different from the previous slide. The first one, Little Gem, is a small, round headed lettuce. It grows close to the ground. The leaves are tender, but have more body than a leaf lettuce. The middle one is called Flashy Trout's Back. The leaves are more delicate, a little more like a leaf lettuce, at least in this stage of development. They have red speckles, I guess, like the back of a trout. Trucus, the third one, I guess that's how you pronounce it, I'm not sure. It's similar to Little Gem in size and shape, but it's red. Next. Of the 3, most of us preferred Little Gem. It's a delicious lettuce. The leaves have just enough body to hold up to salad dressing and to hold its shape in a sandwich. Most of us had good luck growing it. Next. Here's some Flashy Trout's Back growing. This is not from the trial. This was a year later, but I wanted to show this picture because it shows it starting to form a head. A Flashy Trout Back does form a kind of a pointed head. It's larger than Little Gem. And once it gets a head, those leaves have a bit more body than like in the slide that I first showed. With any of these lettuces, you can always harvest the outer leaves while the head is developing. It doesn't hurt anything. It's a good way to just get a little head start on the harvest. Flashy Trout Back provides more leaves in this manner and is a little larger head. Some people preferred it for that reason, but still overall we preferred the Little Gem. Next. Trucus was so slow to grow. It just didn't do anything for the longest time. Maybe it would do better in a different season or a different location or something. None of us had very good luck with it. The best thing about it was its color. It can add some visual interest to salads, and I would think that's the only reason to grow it. Nobody, to my knowledge, tried growing it again. I didn't. So anyway, it was the loser. Next. When we analyzed our experiences with these varieties, we noticed that we had some widely variable results with germination. One of the things we record is data about germination. For example, did 50% of the seeds germinate or 100%? How many days from seeding to germination? With lettuce, the results were all over the place. Sometimes no seeds would germinate. You'd think, oh no, a total failure. Maybe I'd better try again. But then a few days or even weeks later, they would suddenly sprout. We learned that lettuce seeds will sometimes go dormant and lie there waiting for the conditions to be just right. This observation sparked an idea. What if we planted seeds every month for a year to see what happens? Next. We decided to try starting seeds every month for a year to see what we could learn about the timing of seed planting. We chose to do this with just one variety, Little Gem. We followed our usual procedures, starting the seeds in small containers for later transplanting to the garden. There were only a few of us who volunteered to try this, and in the end, only 2 of us completed the entire year. The hardest thing was to remember to plant the seeds. I was determined to do it the first week of every month, but then there were a few times when I suddenly realized, oh no, it's the 15th or the 22nd, and I still haven't planted my seeds. I started them anyway and carried on. We didn't produce much in the way of comparative data. All we could say at the end of the year was, we did it. Next. Starting seeds in the winter presents some challenges other than the hot weather challenges. When temperatures are cold, you can expedite germination by keeping the soil warm. And of course, you must provide adequate light. As I mentioned earlier, lettuce seeds require sunlight. Grow lights are one solution. I didn't use them. So I started mine in the windowsill. This is not optimal, as you will see. Next. Here are some examples of the effects of the Persephone period. These photos were taken in January. The seeds were planted over a period of several months, from September through December. They're maturing at different rates. The date markers on the top photo aren't clearly visible, but if you can see the date on the farthest right, it is December 7th. They look pretty sorry. I think the other dates are October and November. I wish I had labeled these more clearly. At the time, I didn't know I'd be showing them to anyone. I just took these photos because I thought they captured the general trend. The bottom photo shows plants on the far right seeded on September 9th. That's about 4 months that they have been sitting there not growing much. They will grow pretty quickly as we leave the Persephone period. October 22nd on the left is barely past germination after 3 months. This photo also shows the potting system that most of us use in our trials. Seeds are planted in the cell packs, the little packets that you buy seedlings in at the nursery. When they get large enough, they're moved to 4-inch pots. And from there, once they're really up and going, they go into the garden. The good news is that all of these plants eventually took off and did produce heads of lettuce. Not every plant, but at least some from each seeding. Next. Here's another example of the lessons learned about timing of planting seeds. Remember those straggly little December starts in the January photo? The plants on the left here are some of those seedlings. You can see a date marker of 12/7. Those on the right were started on February 15th. This April photo, the February plants are larger and healthier than the December plants. Both will produce lettuce, but you haven't gained anything by starting some in December. Next. Here is an example of seeds just starting in the cell pack in the foreground there. And some larger plants, seedlings that have been put in the ground behind them. A chicken wire frame covers the plant seedlings. This photo is from Pat Hitchcock's garden. She is the other person who made it through the entire year. Both of us plant in ground. Next. Here she's covered the wire frame with a porous cloth. This is a great way to protect your plants from birds and insects. Next. Here's an example of lettuce interplanted in the garden. This is a good thing to do when you've got big plants. You can tuck them in here and there and everywhere. These were also under a row cover, which I just pushed aside so that I could take the picture. I use tulle quite a bit as a cloth for covering plants. Next. Next slide, please. Okay. We've seen some of the struggles with the coldest months. Now we'll get into issues with the hotter months. I don't know which month this seed was planted, but you can plainly see it's growing well in May. Next. These were seeded a month or two after the last slide. You can tell by the size of them, and this is June. They're not very big yet, but they're doing well. June is a friendly month for lettuce. Next slide. This is what happens if you're not paying attention. It suddenly got hot. these plants are pretty stressed. They can be saved by using a row cover and keeping them moist. Row covers can also provide some protection from the sun, not only from pests. Next slide. Whoops. Here we are. These plants made it to August in good shape, but they were left to grow a little too long. They're beginning to bolt, that is to go to seed. See how they're pushing up in the middle of the heads? They're beginning to form a stalk. It will shoot straight up and get tall, produce flowers. The flowers will form seeds, and that's the end of the life cycle of the lettuce plant. The heads shown here are still edible, but they're past their prime. We learned that in summer, if you see a nice looking mature head, harvest it immediately. Don't think you can wait a couple of days because you're planning a dinner party and you'll harvest it then. It can go from mature to bolting in a day, and it will keep better in the refrigerator for a few days than it will in the garden. Next. Here's a plant that has gone completely to seed. This is a flashy trout's back. You can see how it's formed a tall stem, and the leaves have gotten smaller and smaller, and it's got flowers on top. At this point, the leaves aren't even any good to eat. But all is not lost. Seeds are valuable too. You can harvest and save them, or you can just let nature take its course. Next. What happens if you let the plants go to seed? These are some volunteers in my garden this year. These are probably from my spring planting of lettuce. I purposely let some of them go to seed, and voila, a new crop that didn't require starting in pots or babying along in any way. I put my foot in the picture for scale, the size 9, if that helps. Here, volunteers, oh, next. Next slide, please. Volunteers can pop up in unexpected places. Can you see it in this one? That's a flashy trout back right in the middle under the yellow flower. I almost missed it. I was pulling weeds and just about yanked it, but it was still edible. Next slide. My goal now is to keep some lettuce growing in my garden all the time. I don't start seeds every month, and I may not harvest every month, but I grow much more lettuce than I used to. I take advantage of what is coming up voluntarily and fill in with new plants when it's convenient. If I'm too busy or the timing isn't right for seeds, I might buy some seedlings from the nursery. It's still cheaper than buying lettuce at the market, and I know it's fresh and organic. Next slide. Oh, pests. In my experience, the most destructive pest for lettuce is the slug. If it's allowed to get going inside the lettuce head, they will eat holes in the leaves and leave a lot of grass, which is feces for slugs. As soon as the plants go into the ground, or in the case of volunteers, as soon as they start to see them popping up, sprinkle some slug bait on the ground around them. Once the slugs get established inside the plants, they seem to stay there and multiply. By this time, I don't think they are inclined to leave the lettuce to go after the bait, just a hunch. So that's why I try to start early, as soon as you've got small plants. Be sure to use bait that contains iron sulfate. This is the type that is safe for pets and humans. It's best to apply it to moist soil and in the evening. Reapply when the bait disappears, or at least every 2 weeks. It's a challenge to keep slugs out entirely. When you bring the lettuce into your kitchen, be sure to take it apart, look carefully for any slugs, and rinse the leaves thoroughly. You can't be an organic gardener and be squeamish about handling slugs and bugs and such. There are other pests that will attack lettuce, but I haven't experienced significant damage from any of them. Flying insects can best be managed by using row covers. Earwigs can be trapped and removed. Next. In conclusion, the Mediterranean climate is ideally suited to grow cool weather vegetables in the winter and plants that thrive in warm weather in the summer. You can push the limits within the seasons, but it can require extra care and may not always be worthwhile. With lettuce, I think it pays to stretch your growing season. For one thing, you can't preserve it. You can live without fresh beans or broccoli for a few weeks and not really feel the loss, but lettuce is something that most of us will buy if we don't grow it. This doesn't mean starting seeds every month as we did, but rather to think about putting some plants in the ground from time to time. While we were doing this experiment, I bought lettuce only a few times during the entire year. It changed my way of thinking. Now, when I think about making a salad, my first thought is, what's in the garden right now? This might prompt me to take stock of what's growing and maybe start some seeds or buy some seedlings. I also plant other greens that grow throughout the year. Kale, chard, arugula, cabbage, celery are all plants that can span the seasons. When you get used to harvesting, whenever you want some greens, you start to think about adding plants to the garden to keep it going. It's just a matter of changing your habits. It has inspired me to think about what we eat the most and to concentrate on growing those vegetables as much as possible. This is a photo of my garden right now. I just took it the other day. It's not pretty. I use cardboard to suppress weeds, and a lot of it is fallow right now. Plants are scattered here and there, but there are a number of plants that I'm using right now. That's a row of celery in the middle. There's arugula in the foreground on the left. Arugula reseeds itself prolifically. I love it. There's a lot more of it outside the picture frame. There are lettuce plants in the foreground on the right. There's more lettuce scattered here and there throughout the garden. There's more of the garden that's not visible. Anyway, there's some chard and dill on the right in the background, and kale growing in the far back. I'm harvesting all of these right now. In addition, there are some things that aren't producing just yet, but will be soon. You can see a little bit of a trellis poking out of on the left side of the screen, and that's snap peas are growing there, and they'll be climbing up that trellis very soon. There are also onions here and there, and some Brussels sprouts, and some rutabagas just on the other side of the celery. Well, I hope that gives you some ideas, and that you'll try growing some more lettuce. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Lonnie. I'm a master gardener, and we're going to get to your questions in a couple of minutes, but we wanted to tell you about a few resources that are available on the Master Gardeners of Napa County web page. And the address is here on your screen. You can take a screenshot of it or jot it down. It is worth having as a reference. If you don't do any of that, just Google Napa Master Gardeners and the page will come right up. When you open that URL, you're going to see our webpage, and this is what it looks like. It changes a little bit seasonally, but there are a number of resources here that are curated to help you be the best gardener you can be, or the best gardener you want to be. And I just wanted to point out a few things that are available on this page. There are many more that we won't cover tonight. First and foremost, about halfway down the page where this red arrow is, you will see a tile for past programs and events. And if you click on that, you will get access to YouTube videos of all of our library talks, including this one. It'll take a few days to get up, but we have quite a library of talks there. And there are also slideshows and references from a number of presentations that we've done. In the same basic area, just slightly up from past programs and events, I've circled and highlighted in light green a section that's called Have Garden Questions. This is a lifesaver. There are so many resources here for you if you open this up. First and foremost is our help desk. We have master gardeners that stand by, well, not every day, but several times a week, and also often at our farmers market table. But we have people that can help you solve any problems you're having with your plants and do their best to answer your questions. And if we do not know the answer, we will find out. And sometimes we have to do some research before we can give you a definitive answer, but we do our very best. There are other resources and garden tips available on the page. But before I show you a couple of others, I want to back up. Donna was talking about pests. And lettuce seems to be a crop that is fairly easy to deal with pest-wise, but there are a number of other plants and vegetables that have more pests, more diseases, more conditions, and concurrently more questions that come up from their growers. So I wanted to show you or tell you about some resources you can use if you do have problems with your plants. The first one is called the UC Plant Problem Diagnostic Tool. And this is wonderful because it's photo driven. It will ask you questions and you pick the best picture, and through a process of winnowing down your choices, it does a very good job of identifying what your problem may be if you do not know what it is. Once you know what your problem is, say, for example, whiteflies, you can go to the next link, UC Pest Notes Library, and look up a white paper, essentially, on whiteflies, and it will tell you how to identify them, how to eradicate them, how to prevent them. Extremely useful. And the Pest Notes Library is, while not encyclopedic, still fairly thorough. It'll cover everything from fungi to four-legged creatures like deer. So it's just good to know about. And the third thing I already talked about, there's a link for the UC Master Gardeners Help Desk. And between those three things, you should be in the clover or the romaine or whatever it is you're growing. This is just another highlight of the page with some resources available for specific to vegetable planting. There's a month-by-month planting list, a planting and harvesting guide, and a vegetable planting calendar. So if you're a traditionalist and don't want to try planting something like lettuce every month of the year, you can look at this to find out when it is traditionally planted in a given area. All right, that concludes the information portion of tonight's program, and we are ready for questions. So you can type them into chat, and Donna will do her best to answer them.
We have one question out there. I found that when lettuce seedlings sit for a while without growing, the resulting heads, once they're big enough to harvest, tend to be bitter. The longer they sit, the more bitter. Did you find that to be true?
I can't say that I have. I didn't notice it. I mean, maybe it has more to do with the conditions while it's growing, while it's maturing, that there's something in the soil or the amount of water or something that would cause it to be bitter.
I wonder also if the varietal makes a difference.
That could be too. Yeah. I guess all I can say is I haven't noticed that. I'll have to look for it. Maybe there is some correlation there and I hadn't noticed it because sometimes one lettuce will be a little more bitter than another and I
Mhm.
don't know. Yeah, varieties are different. I've seldom found Little Gem to be bitter, for one thing.
Any other questions for Donna? Or anybody want to share some of their other experiences growing lettuce?
Yeah. Do you recommend a seed source? I don't know if there's any difference. I like territorial for some reason, just because I think it's because it's on the West Coast. And I kind of feel like it's more appropriate for our area, but I could be, it could just be a prejudice. I don't know. Most of the seed catalogs will send you good, or even the stores. I haven't had any bad seeds. Um,
No other questions? I just ask folks, do you find it interesting hearing from our field test team? And are you interested in us offering other field test team experiments, I should say?
Are you asking me or the general?
Audience.
Oh, the audience, okay,
Would you
yeah.
like to hear more?
When are the best months to start lettuce seeds? Probably early spring or spring. I mean, spring's the best time to plant most things. Because they don't have a really long, it doesn't take a long time for them to mature. So you can plant them in, say, March or something and have them within a couple of months. And that's probably the best time for growing lettuce, I would think.
And then there was another question regarding seeds, I believe. Do saved
Oh,
lettuce seeds tend to regrow true to the original variety?
Well, with most plants, it depends on whether they're a hybrid. All of the lettuce seeds I've tried are not hybrids, so they're true.
Mhm,
I can just check on the seed package. If it's a hybrid, it may not be true.
mhm. That's true for owls, yeah.
Yeah, all of them.
And then we already talked about the best month to grow. And it says, I'd love to see more experiments and to be part of it.
Are you a master gardener? Join the master gardeners.
We have talked about doing that before, is to at the same time we're planting, is to let others know we're planting and then share information. I think we did that with
We
cabbage
did.
a couple years back.
We've done it with, I think it was cauliflower and with our tomatoes in containers.
Yes.
And we did have people participate. It gets hard to keep up with everybody, but it's worth trying again. Yeah. We did have some really enthusiastic participants with the tomatoes in containers experiment.
And that's going to be our topic actually in April.
Yeah.
What that again from our field test team, what they learned of
Uh-huh.
growing tomatoes in containers, and you can grow tomatoes in small spaces. Thank you, Donna. Thank you for sharing all your information this evening.
Right. Thank you.
Tune in next month in March. Our library talk will be agave, more than tequila, and century plants. We hope you'll join.